Modern Horizons 3 is here, so it's time for our Precon review, where we review every Precon from worst to best.
I'm Mia, and I like watching reality TV, but it's bad.
I'm BZ. I love a good game show, even though most of them are trash. We're the Nitpicking Nerds, sponsored by Card Kingdom. Card Kingdom doesn't play games with your reality. You can go to them and buy magic cards. I lost it. I had it and I lost it.
We have our own page on there. You can see some of our favorite cards to play. Go check it out. You can actually buy all 4 Precons on there in a bundle price of $315. That is a great deal for all of these.
That is going to be important to our later assessment of the Precon, so if you skip this, you're missing out. We're also sponsored by Dragon Shield because they got the best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
When you buy the best sleeves in the multiverse,
good sleeves.
then you get to support the Nitpicking Nerds channel and buy sleeves that are great for yourself at the same time. It's really sort of a win-win, and you can use code
NERDS
at checkout to save 5% of your real money tax dollars.
They really are great sleeves. I love the custom sleeves, and I love the solid color sleeves. There's also Moxfield. There's going to be an ad somewhere. You can't guess where it is because you're a liar if you said you got it right. We also have a Patreon, and it's a great way to support the channel. You can help send the cats to college. You can see some awesome gameplay never before seen anywhere else. And we can even audit your decks for you.
That sounds pretty good to me. So if you're thinking that sounds cool to you as well, go to the description. Every link you could ever need is there. So this is our, not annual, it's our every... Setly Precon review. Whenever the Precons come out, we want to make sure you are well equipped to know which ones you want, if any. Maybe you want to buy them all. We want to make sure you get all the deals, all the things, all the pros, all the cons. So for each of these Precons, we're going to be covering the commander, the total value of the cards that's individually that you'll get in the Precons, the game plan of the deck, the best reprints, the best new cards, some budget ads for the deck, some non-budget ads for the deck, and of course, some cuts because every Precon's got some head scratchers. That's the most fun part, is going, get out of here.
There are a lot of strategies, and there are a lot of really cool cards in here to talk about. So I'm really excited to get into it. But we're going to start off with the one that we like the least, and that's going to be the Graveyard Overdrive one. This is listed at $60, and this is the Jund Graveyard one. Its commander is Disa the Restless. 2 black, red, green for a 5/6. Whenever a Lurgoyf permanent card is put into your graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, you put it onto the battlefield. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a Tarmogoyf token. They are just spitting in the face of the old Tarmogoyfs when it used to be hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, Disa's really interesting, and they are just giving out Tarmogoyfs for free now. It's not as special as it used to be. But that ability to put Lurgoyfs from anywhere, basically if they hit their graveyard from anywhere, they go back into play, assuming you don't sacrifice them, that's really strong. The problem with this Precon is that there's 5 or 6 Lurgoyfs and 1 or 2 changelings, so that's almost never going to happen. So that part is kind of secondary, but when you can connect with your creatures, you get more Tarmogoyfs, which is at least cool. However, those tokens don't interact anyway with the first ability. It's just kind of you're going to get a bunch of Tarmogoyfs. They're big tokens. Hopefully you can smash with them.
I feel like if this had more support, this could be a pretty good deck. However, there only are a few Lurgoyf commander cards, or just cards in general, and then you're relying mostly on changelings, which is just the building blocks of all underutilized card types, creature types.
I think this deck actually kind of slaps. The commander kind of slaps. This deck is lacking in Goyfs, lacking in ways to put Goyfs into the graveyard, but that line of text is really tempting, and there are some wombo combos. This is a deck that really benefits from being upgraded. So it's not going to rank highly in the out-of-the-box Precon reviews that we're doing. This is a great deck to buy if you want to upgrade it, though, because I think even 10 upgrades could go a really long way. This is a $60 deck, though, and that's the thing we wanted to mention about the Modern Horizons 3 Precons. They are more premium product than the rest of the Precons you're going to see. Usually they're between $40 and $50. These are $60, and some of them are even more. So just a heads up that you're getting overall, I'd say, higher quality decks, more powerful decks with better reprints, but you are paying more. So just keep that in mind.
So as you can tell by the price, not all Precons are created equal. However, right now, the value of all the individual cards in this deck are $180. Just be warned, though, that is pre-sale pricing as of today.
Yeah, a lot of these cards, they're going to go down, but I think it's interesting to say that, we'll give you the price of all the Precons together, we'll give you the price of each individual Precon, and we'll give you the value of the individual cards. 180 is a big asterisk. They will go down, but I don't think it's going to go down to 50. I think the 180 some of that is cards that have already existed that are going to stay where they're at, and then some of them are chase cards that will go down a little, but they'll hold some value. So just keep it in mind.
I mean, some of these are Commander product exclusive, and if they do see play in other places, they could shoot up, and this could be even more in theory. But some of the best reprints right now are sitting at $37, one of them being the Reaver Cleaver. I'm pretty surprised to see this in here, considering it is a graveyard-based deck. I would have expected to see something else, honestly.
Yeah, is it just because the Tarmogoyfs are, like, kind of big? They're kind of vanilla creatures with not much going on that you want to give them, like, the +1 and have them deal damage? Maybe. Anyway, for these reprints, we're going to be going over the 3 best ones from each Precon and then telling you what the total of those are. So if you wanted to buy the Precon, flip the 3 best cards in it, sell it, get some of your money back, that could also be a valid way to go. The next one's Archon of Cruelty at $12. This is a really good card, and I have no problems with this card. I don't really think it screams Tarmogoyf in any way. I think this deck's very lacking in what to do. It just kind of throws a bunch of good cards. It feels like a Jund Mount style deck.
I mean, this is a brutal card. I've been slapped with this a few times, if not many, many times in his Oscar deck, but I was happy to pay $25 for it. Seeing it at $12 makes me feel pretty okay.
Pretty solid. We also have Selvala, Heart of the Wilds at $10. Just another good card. At least this one works with your Tarmogoyfs. The first Tarmogoyf that enters will probably be the biggest creature, so you draw a card off of it, and then you can make like 6 or 7 mana, because Tarmogoyfs check all graveyards to see their power toughness, and they're probably going to be pretty big.
I mean, this is always going to be Commander playable. I'm happy to see it reprinted. But moving on to the best new cards in this deck, one of them is Gluttonous Hellkite, XX black, red, green for a 3/3. When you cast it, each player sacks X creatures. It ETBs with 2 1/1 counters on it for each creature sacrificed this way. This can add up quite a lot. It also has flying and trample, so even if people have a little paltry Thopter or 2, you could swing in for a ton of damage.
Yeah, I also like, it's kind of funny, and it's not super relevant to why we like this card, but it is if you need a dragon for really cheap. You can just cast it as a 3-mana 3/3 flying trample and get like triggers off of whatever dragon matter stuff you have. But I kind of like this as a scaling way to, like, I can pay 5 mana for like a Flashback Marauder, which isn't great, but I also get a 5/5 out of it. And if I pay 7 mana, I get a 7/7. And now everybody sacrifices 2 things. I think that's where it starts to get pretty nasty. I like the scalability of this. It's not the best card in the world, but definitely worth mentioning. I think also, if you see a card in our best new cards and you go, that's not very good, that just speaks to how well the quality, how good the quality of the overall new cards is.
I want to see this in like a different type of Jund's deck, just something with a lot of like cost reduction and maybe playing with the graveyard a little. I always think of Jund as like, so much sacrifice, and yes, this has sacrifice in it, but I think this takes it like in a more punchy way, and I think that's more interesting in my opinion.
Yeah, next up is Infested Thrynax. Now notice none of the new cards that we're saying are very good are Tarmogoyf related. This is a 5-mana 4/4 flash. ETB, until end of turn, whenever a non-token creature you control dies, you get a number of 1/1 saplings equal to that creature's power. So works well with Goyfs. If your Goyfs get swept away or you sacrifice them, you get a lot of tokens. But this is more of like a green-black aristocrat type card. It is a response to a board wipe, but I would not play this card unless I could use it proactively as well.
This is not the deck that I expect to see it in, but I can see this taking over Commander at many tables. This is pretty powerful.
It can be pretty sick. I also Siege Gang Lieutenant. I like this card. 3 in a red, 2/2. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control your commander, you get 2 1/1s, and they gain haste until end of turn, and you can pay 2 and sack a goblin to deal 1 to any target. That is lesser than. I'm not too interested in dealing 1, but it is a sack outlet, I guess, if you need one for something else. But 2 tokens every single turn for free if you have your commander. This is a good addition to like the Lieutenant cycle. It reminds me of the one that gives you Thopters. I'm blanking on the name.
That's Loyal Attendant right there, but Perforos decks, watch out. I think I might need to add this one to mine. This is strong.
We're also going to give you some budget ads for this deck if you're looking to spend less than $1 on a card. There's a few cards you can pick up and have a reasonable time upgrading this deck. I'm going to start with Terravore. It's mediocre, but it is a Tarmogoyf, and it's one of the only Tarmogoyfs that costs less than $1 that they left out of this deck, so I guess you can pick it up. There's also Masked Vandal. It is a Lurgoyf, so it triggers off of Disa's, whenever you discard it or mill it type ability, you can get it for free.
Torian Mauler is also in here because we need all the Lurgoyfs that we can get. We are scraping the bottom of the barrel, but at least this one gets bigger. There's also Wild Growth and Utopia Sprawl. We're going to be wanting to ramp as fast as possible. These are cheap, easy ways to get your extra mana.
But Tarmogoyfs that we haven't necessarily mentioned yet, this deck also wants to spread out the types of cards because Tarmogoyf cares about the number of types, so you want to have enchantments and artifacts and planeswalkers and stuff. So I think this is a good way to put ramp in your deck while satisfying Tarmogoyf's needy little restriction of, hey, you got to play a lot of different types.
Battles are also a great way to do this, especially with Invasion of Zendikar. I love this card. It's great. It gets your lands. It becomes a creature. It becomes a mana dork. I really like this card quite a lot.
If you flip it, it's kind of like 4 mana search for 3 lands because it becomes a land on the other side, and having that extra battle type is just going to be super nice. If you want to spend more money and maybe more than $5 for these non-budget ads, we're going to start with Tarmogoyf, the classic. I can't believe they left it out. They just threw everything else out. They're making Tarmogoyf tokens. They got Lurgoyfs. They're naming everything blank Goyf, but they left out the boy. He's only $10, and I think you want him for this, right?
I definitely think so. I feel like that's insult to injury, right? Like, okay, make sure he's like less than 10 when everyone remembers him at super expensive. Okay, leave him out of his own deck.
Leave him out of his own deck. He wasn't even invited to his own party. I also like Incarnation Technique. It's going to mill 5 twice for you, then reanimate. So you got the big beefy creatures like Archon of Cruelty that you can get back, which is great. But if you flip any Goyfs along the way, you just get those for free right away.
That's really good. And just that's a lot of value too. Breach the Multiverse is going to get you some Goyfs in there too, because everyone's going to mill 10 and you're going to take something from everyone's best thing in their graveyard.
So you're going to end up with the 4 best creatures in anyone's graveyards.
Or there's a Planeswalker you could do too. I think.
Including your own. You might even snipe one of your own Planeswalkers. There's a couple in this deck. And any Goyfs you mill just go into play. So now you're in the situation where you've got the best board. You can dominate. You can even win the game next turn. All from just like 1 card plus Disa.
Hey, Breach the Multiverse, I love you. You're wonderful. But Entomb, if you want to find something especially juicy to sneak right into there, just put it in and maybe you can get it back with Breach or something else.
Instant speed, 1 mana, instant speed, put a Lurgoyf from your deck onto the battlefield. Kind of a wombo combo. There's not a Lurgoyf that is so good that makes me go, wow, this is broken. But you definitely want Entomb in here. I think Necrogoyf could be good too. That might be the one I get.
Greater Good is also a great way to sacrifice some creatures, put some stuff into the graveyard, and then bring them back with your commander on the field. I think Greater Good is also just like, we need some card draw, right? Every precon I feel is always lacking card draw.
Yeah, so you're going to sack like a 4/4 or whatever, maybe a Tarmogoyf token. So you draw like 5 cards if it's a 5/6. Then you can discard 3. Make sure all the ones you discard are Lurgoyfs, and they just go into play.
But as BZ mentioned earlier, every precon has a few head scratchers, so we're going to have 5 cuts for you also. One of them is Burnished Heart. This isn't good ramp. You're in green. You want different types. I would rather just have a mana dork or anything else, but if I need different types, all of the other ones we put in will help just get you to that Tarmogoyf count to begin with.
Yeah, it's an artifact creature, but the rate is so bad on it. It's just too slow. Yavimaya Elder also in here. I don't know how this guy stumbled in from 2012, but nobody plays this anymore. I don't think it's a good rate, and it's a lot of mana to spend to not get a ton. You just kind of farting around, and I don't like it. Bituminous Blast. This is the card that I saw that made me think we're really just trying to like jund him out with no real strategy. It's a 2-for-1, but like 4 damage is really, really bad for 5 mana. So that plus a random spell is not what I'm interested in ever, unless I'm Cascade specific. And then Siphon Mine, also from like 2012. I don't see this card ever. I don't know if I've ever seen this resolved against me, maybe once in a Tiny Bones deck, but we're not interested in the discard, so let's just get it out.
I mean, we're not playing Battle Cruiser anymore. This is like premium precon level, like some of the most powerful precons to have existed in the WotC lineup, so I'm not sure why we have these cards. Also, Garruk Apex Predator. I don't want to pay 7 mana for a Planeswalker that doesn't do enough for 7 mana when I could be playing Breach the Multiverse for 7 mana. Come on, those power levels are so opposite ends.
Yeah, I would say aside from these 5 cards and maybe 1 or 2 others, the precons were really good. This precon was really good. There was not a ton of stuff that I was like head scratching, but obviously there's always 5. There's always 5 cuts from every precon, but I did like that they were at least putting 3. They had 3 Planeswalkers in this deck, which is more than usual. So we're going to move on, though. We're going to go on to number 3. The number 3 precon from MH3 is Creative Energy. This is a $60 precon as well. The commander is Satya, Aether Flux Genius. 1 white, blue, red for a 3/5 menace haste. When it attacks, create a tap an attacking token that's a copy of up to 1 target non-token creature you control. You get 2 energy. At the beginning of the next end step, sacrifice it unless you pay an amount of energy equal to its mana value. So if you make a copy of a 4 mana thing, at the end step, you have a choice. You can either just let it go away or pay 4 energy to keep it around. So this deck is all about energy. It wants you to build up, store energy, spend it in various ways. And then there's a sort of sub-theme of like, hey, you've got a lot of artifacts in here and you want to copy tokens, or you want to copy creatures and make tokens of them with Satya.
Honestly, I was pretty disappointed when Fallout did the energy thing. I was like, can it be better? And I feel like this is where I wanted it to land. This is an interesting take on energy. It makes your energy feel like it's worth it. And copying stuff is always pretty cool.
Yeah, it also had some pretty good reprints. It had almost all the reprints for energy that I would expect. And the only cards they were missing were the Fallout cards, which we will show you what we added shortly. The value of the individual cards of this precon, again, at pre-sale value is 170. So you can at least compare them to each other since they'll all be at pre-sale. And so this has less less value slightly than the Disa Tarmogoyf deck. But let's go to the best reprints. These were better than the Jund one, at least the top three. We have Goldspan Dragon at $15. Really solid Treasure Maker, Dragon, sort of cheap flyer.
I'm really happy to see this. I mean, that is a pretty good staple in a lot of commander decks, especially ones that want to make a ton of treasures. There's also a Chroma's Will. This just got a reprint. I'm so pleasantly surprised to see it in a Precon again.
It's $23, and it's probably the best reprint of any of these Precons, if I recall correctly. And we also have Gonti's Aetherheart, $10, exactly the type of energy card that I would want in this Precon to stop it from sort of spiking if people get really excited about it, which is definitely great. So the $48 in 3 cards. You could buy this Precon for $60, sell 3 cards for approximately $48, probably a little bit less, and then just go, cool, I have the rest of this Precon.
I'm very pleasantly surprised to see this. I mean, especially with a Chroma's Will, that's a good closer in most commander decks that can run it. But let's check out some new cards, shall we? Salvation Colossus is one of them. 6 white for a 9/9 with flying, vigilance, and trample. When you attack other creatures you control, get +2/+2 and indestructible till end of turn, and you can unearth it by paying 8 energy, which that might not be that hard depending on what you have. If you have proliferation strategies, if you could just churn up a bunch of energy, but +2/+2 and indestructible, not bad.
Yeah, we don't necessarily say that the best new cards coming out of these Precons are specifically for these Precons. They're just kind of in general some of the best cards we think for Commander. This doesn't really necessarily have to be an energy card. You can just ignore the Unearth and play it as a big artifact creature that you can reanimate from other methods, but it just says whenever you attack. So even if you play this and it has Summoning Sickness, attack with everything else, now they get +2/+2 and it's a completely free attack. So I kind of like this as like an artifact creature deck kind of top end.
I mean, put this in a white weenies deck, everything gets +2/+2 and has indestructible. I mean, that's great for combat and some big swingy metas.
Yeah, one of my favorite mechanics that they've never really touched after one cycle of cards was Demonstrate, but they went back to it with Silver Quill Lecturer, and it's a 5-mana 3/3 that gives your creatures Demonstrate, which means you can choose to copy them, and if you do, an opponent also copies them. So if I play like a Wood Elves, I get a Wood Elves, a second Wood Elves, and I can give of my other Wood Elves, this was a great example, because I can give it to a person who can't use it at all. They just have a 1/1.
I'm really excited to see. I really love Strixhaven in general. I love the theme of it, and to be bringing back little bits of it here and there, that's super cool.
I mean, this card just seems super good. Like, you kind of have to be a heavy creature deck, but being able to start giving out creatures to the person who needs them less, which is exactly what we did with the Demonstrate spells, which were all great. We just talked about Incarnation Technique. Being able to give them away to the person who can use them the least, that makes it even stronger when I get 2 of them.
I mean, most commander decks revolve around creatures, so this can be useful in a lot of those. There's also Conversion Apparatus, 3 mana for an artifact. If you tap it, you can add a colorless. If you pay 3 and tap it, you get 3 energy. If you tap it and pay 3 energy, you could add 3 mana in any combination of colors. We usually don't like 3 mana rocks, but this has a little bit more use, and if you have just a bunch of energy built up, you can actually just utilize this to have like a Black Lotus type effect.
Yeah, this turns energy into mana pretty effectively. I don't really want to pay 3 and tap it to get 3, but I can in an emergency, or if I'm trying to build up to something else like a Gonti's Aetherheart to take an extra turn. But I do like this specifically only for energy. The drop off between those first 2 and this was pretty heavy for best cards in the Precon, but I think it's a really good energy card. It'll probably see play in there and like nowhere else. But for budget ads, we got to add cards in this deck on a budget. Let's start with Dr. Madison Lee, because the one thing that this deck left out, like we said, was the Fallout cards. That makes sense because most of them are in universe. They don't make sense to put in a Magic Precon. Dr. Madison Lee is just going to make your energy, let you spend the energy, and then let you like reanimate artifacts, which is kind of what this deck wants to do. You can reanimate the 9/9 and give your dudes +2/+2.
I mean, this has a perfect home in here. I'm happy that all those cards are less than $1 too. I mean, obviously energy wasn't a super supported mechanic, but I think it has legs with the Fallout and then this Precon.
We also have Electro Siphon, which is a nice way to keep removal in your deck, but also turn it into something that benefits you. So instead of a random counterspell like a Arcane Denial, you play this, counter their thing, get a bunch of energy, and now you're like fueling your game plan. We also have Brotherhood Scribe. As you get energy, as the game goes along, every time you get energy, you pump your entire team. This is kind of a win con. And then Electrostatic Pummeler, How could they not include my boy? This is the jankiest, crappiest energy payoff, but everyone loves it because you just get to double it. If you give it trample or flying or something, you can KO somebody.
I mean, that's just basically game over. I feel like this deck had problems closing, so the last two, those are just really good ways to just make sure your deck can do the thing and make you survive to the end game. Flux Channeler, also a great way to just proliferate, get yourself a bunch of energy counters. We need as many as we can get.
Yeah, this card really wants you to be casting a lot of non-creatures to bump your energy up every time, but as long as you've got that, and this deck has a lot of artifacts, a lot of mana rocks, you can slowly, continuously tick up your energy a couple times per turn.
But if you have a little bit more money to spend, how about some non-budget ads? One of them is Dreamtide Whale. This is a big boy for only 3 mana, and when someone casts their second spell each turn, and I do mean anybody, you proliferate. That is great, but it does have vanishing, but you can proliferate those counters.
Whenever someone does it, you get an entire turn cycle with the whale again. This card actually seems kind of silly to me in certain decks, like in Infect, I'm going to hate it, and in Energy, it'll just be nice. You know, no one's going to bother you too much because it's like, 1 energy per turn cycle is only fine, but if it's poison, I want to be so irritated. Guide of Souls is a nice one that just kind of ticks up your energy whenever you play creatures. It's really cheap, and it's really good. It helps bolster your life total, too. And we also have Volatile Storm Drake, Gilded Drake in this deck, because we're going to switch with enough energy. Any control of any 2 creatures, we're going to be taking your best stuff.
I'm really excited to see this, the Gilded Drake of today, but it does have energy counters, so I feel like it's not going to be playable in too many decks, but here, it can be fun.
It also kind of has the secret mode, since you don't have to pay energy and the creature will get sacrificed. You could just treat it as a 2-mana sorcery that says, destroy target creature, its controller gets a 3/2 flyer, which is like, in an emergency, it's not the worst situation.
It really isn't that bad. I mean, there are so many times where I would rather just destroy someone's creature and give them a 3/2 in response.
All right, it's like, I can't be annihilated by your Eldrazi. I need to give you something. I don't care.
Sure, hit me for 3. It's fine.
Yeah, you could also go the route of like what Satya does of like copying things with haste. So Molten Duplication is a way to go. It's like, oh, I've got this big creature. I want to make more of them, like the 9/9. Great. Here's another one. Get the extra ability from an extra ETB or something, and now you're off to the races. And then finally, I think since you're casting a lot of artifacts, Displacer Kitten's probably just great in this deck. You've got a lot of creatures and stuff, and non-land permanents that enter and get you energy. So now it's like if you've got one of those things out, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you get some number of energy, and that really helps you stay ahead and also reset some of your energy payers. Like now I'm getting energy, but I'm going to flicker this thing that can use energy to draw cards or something, and it's like an engine.
There could be a lot of good targets for that, and there are a lot of artifacts running around. You might have a big board in no time.
Oh, yeah. Okay, but cuts. Now, the cuts for this deck, a little bit less bad. You know, these cuts were a little bit better and more. It fit the deck a little bit more than the Tarmogoyf deck, but we're going to cut Coveted Jewel. It is really good with Displacer Kitten, but we're not going to bother with that. It just doesn't have anything to do with energy, and we're not 100% focused on, like, chipping in with 1/1s or flyers, so I just cut it.
I feel like this card always gets around the table more than I want to, which is anyone but me having it, and so I don't like having these things floating around.
Yeah, you don't have full control of it either. I also cut Amped Raptor. It is an energy payoff, but this is more of like a constructed card. Flipping is like very random, and if you have few energy, if you don't have enough, you might hit a big spell and then you just can't do anything with it. Also, Hourglass of the Lost, another energy card, but it feels like it just wasn't gelling and vibing with what this deck wanted. I don't know. I feel like we can't take advantage of it.
I don't think so either. Combustible Gear Hulk, this is okay, and if you make a bunch of copies, I guess, but it's really, if I want to make copies of something, this isn't first on my list.
Yeah, definitely swap this for something bigger that you can get a little bit more value out of. And then Tezzeret's Gambit, I always hated this card in energy decks. What is 1 energy going to give you? Why? Like, I don't want to play Divination that deals 2 damage to me, that I lose 2 life to cast. And giving me 1 single energy is not going to move the needle on that. Get that out of here.
1 energy is not going to kill them. It doesn't work exactly in the way that like it would work in a poison deck or something.
Yeah, no, that's way different. 10% killing a player is different than get 1 energy. Moving on to our number 2 deck from these Precon release. This one's a doozy. This is Eldrazi Incursion. The price of this one, couldn't tell you why, but it's $140. So plan accordingly with what the reprint value is and what you can expect to get this deck for, what the cards are worth. That's $140 you got to spend. The commander is Ulalek, Fused Atrocity. Colorless/white, colorless/blue, colorless/black, colorless/red, colorless/green. That's 5 mana for a 2/5 with Devoid. Whenever you cast an Eldrazi spell, you can pay colorless. If you do, copy all spells you control, then copy all other activated and triggered abilities you control. You can choose new targets for the copies. This is the frontrunner for most confusing card in the entire release of Modern Horizons 3 and the Modern Horizons 3 Commander cards. We're going to use an example. Let's say Warped Tusker. When you cast it, you get an Eldrazi spawn, and it's a 6/8. So if you cast it, Ulalek will trigger. Now you can copy all spells you control. That includes Warped Tusker, which is on the stack. Then it copies other triggered abilities, like the when you cast this, get a Scion. So you'll end up with 2 Scions and 2 Warped Tuskers. So Eldrazi love cast triggers. This basically copies those. Please play this responsibly. It is very confusing. This is an Eldrazi deck, obviously. 5 colors, devoid, all the bangers, all the best hitters. It is a typal deck. You've got big, huge boys. You got no trouble closing, unlike some of the other decks from this batch, and it is a banger.
There are so many things I want to say about this. First off, I'm not surprised to see this at $140. I feel like the Eldrazi decks are always way more expensive than the other ones. Second, I'm so excited to see 5-color Eldrazi. I came in when there were the devoid multicolored Eldrazi, or multicolored, let's say, in the casting cost, and this is such a cool throwback to that, but I do wish they brought back in Jest. The value of all of the cards in here is $230, which seems like way more than everything else until you realize you are paying $140 yet again for this, so.
Yeah, wait, so if I'm paying $60 for, like, the Jund Precon, and the cards are worth $180.
Roughly.
This is not good value compared to that, because I'm paying more than double, and the cards are not worth more than double at all.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's definitely worth noting for the reprint value. And bonus lore fact for those people, because I've seen this a lot, and I looked it up today. Ulalek is not present day. This is not, I don't think Ulalek, so Ulalek is not the result of Ulamog and Kozilek dying. They basically were just in proximity to each other at some point in the distant past, and this thing just sort of popped out. This thing existed while Kozilek and Ulamog also existed, and it is unknown if it currently existed today. So
wait, what?
That's your fun fact.
Okay, I guess. I mean, there's just, they might all just see each other at like a bar and be like, oh, hey, you're kind of like us.
Ulamog and Kozilek are dead.
Well, in theory.
In theory, the bar in the sky, where all Eldrazi go. We're going to talk about the best reprints, and honestly, factoring in the price of this deck, not super stoked about it. We have Morph the Boundless at $11. Okay, that's a nice typal payoff, a kindred payoff for Eldrazi. We have Eldrazi Monument at $10. It's a good way to give your dudes flying, I guess. I don't even know if I'd play it in this deck. And we have Eldrazi Conscription at $10. Another one I'm not super thinking of when it comes to Eldrazi, because I'm thinking of the actual boys themselves, and an aura. This usually goes in like Voltron decks or something. That's $31. I was hoping for like $20 cards in this deck. I was hoping for 3 $20 cards for the price tag.
I feel like the top 3 reprints that we do for every deck, this is the lowest one, which is so sad to see because this is the highest price tag. I feel like it's like a $5 card here, a $2 card here, and then in the other decks it's like $20 card, $10 card, $15 card.
Are we just paying for like
there's no Chroma's Will in here.
We're just paying for the hype factor? I don't know.
We're just paying because people love Eldrazi and people won't stop loving Eldrazi. Right, so me included, of
all
course.
That money stuff, that's going to keep this deck from being number 1, but the deck itself is actually kind of sweet and has a lot of stuff going on, and you can end the game. So we're going to talk about the best new cards. Benthic Anomaly. This one was sick. I had to reread this one. It is 6 and a blue for a 7/8 with Devoid. When you cast a spell for each opponent, choose a creature they control. You get a token that's a copy of one of those creatures, except its power is equal to the total power of those creatures. Its toughness is equal to the total toughness of those creatures, and it's a colorless Eldrazi creature. So you choose your 3, you choose 2 of the biggest things and the best thing, the thing you actually want. Then you get a huge version of that. It's kind of like the Mimeoplasm.
That's really sick. And for 7 mana, that's what I want to see at 7 mana. Not some of those paltry other ones we saw earlier where it's like deal 5 damage for 5 mana. It's like, no, I want the best thing and I want the biggest thing.
All right, what's our next thing?
The next one is Selective Obliteration. 3 colorless for a sorcery. Each player chooses a color. Then exile each permanent unless it's colorless or it's only the color its controller chose.
Right. So if I cast this spell, I'm not going to have any colored creatures, so I don't care what happens. I choose whatever. Let's say Mia chooses white, and Jeremy, the person, sure, Jeremy, just off camera, you don't see him. He chooses blue. You're gonna exile all creatures that are not colorless, and then Jeremy keeps his blue creatures. Mia keeps her white creatures, but they lose the colors of the opposite.
Yeah. That's a little confusing, but it doesn't matter for you because you're going to have only devoid creatures, so it's just like, all right, get rid of most of your stuff. Get it out of here.
Basically, it doesn't do the thing that I thought it did at first, where I'm like, oh, so if they choose like blue, white, and green, they save all blue, white, and green creatures? No, only there, so it is definitely board wipe territory. This is a very good card.
I like the fact that it says only the color, so all the color creatures are
gone.
out.
They're gone.
So if you're running a bunch of like the Joda type decks, it's like, okay, we'll just nuke your entire board. Bye.
And you know what? I want to mention that too, because A lot of the value of this precon is not in reprints. It is in the new shiny cards. A lot of these Eldrazi cards are like $10 plus. So that's another thing to factor in. There's probably 7 or 6 of these new cards that are $10 plus, but that is pre-sale, so the numbers might go down. We also have Eldritch Immunity, colorless for a Kindred instant. Target creature you control gains protection from each color, and it has Overload for 4 in a colorless. So your whole team gains protection from every color, most likely meaning they are unblockable, and now you can kill people.
I wouldn't be surprised to see this in other decks that are not Eldrazi. I mean, 1 mana, just target creature gets protection from stuff.
Save it.
I feel like 6 mana obviously is not great for that, but like in a pinch, 1 mana for a colorless, because there are so many lands that just make colorless. If you have like a Cavern of Souls or a Caves of Koilos running around, you could make the colorless pretty easily.
Yeah, decks can cast this. This is not just an Eldrazi card, so keep that in mind for your next deck that's going wide, maybe wants some protection. 5 budget adds. Herald of Kozilek. It's a great one. It reduces all of your colorless spells by 1. And if every card in your deck is colorless, this is basically like a Goblin and Narcomancer. I know how great that card plays. It's basically that.
I mean, less than $1, it's so tough to get a colorless deck unless you're Eldrazi, but this is going to shine in there.
There's also from the main set, Drowner of Truth. It's the MDFC Eldrazi. I do think this is probably the worst of the 20 new MDFCs that we got, but how is it not an absolute slam dunk here?
I'm just happy to see MDFCs in all of the colors. I'm happy to see it in colorless too. That heralds the end. This is 2 mana. It's going to be a lord for all your colorless creatures and give a little bit of reduction too.
Yeah, for the gigantic creatures that you're trying to cast, makes it a little bit easier. We also have Breaker of Creation. I like this as a budget option. If you don't want to spend $1 billion on all the legendary titans, you don't have to. This is just a big, giant, almost unkillable Annihilator 2 thing.
Do you think that we're going to be able to, once all the prices fall, make a budget Eldrazi deck? Because that wasn't possible prior. That definitely wasn't possible before the set.
I would love to try my hand at like a $50 5-color Eldrazi deck. That would be so silly.
If this drops enough, I would love to see that too. And you could even add Catacomb Sifter. That's your boy.
My boy, he makes Scion, and you can, when your dudes die, you scry, and it's kind of like a weird ritual effect, and it's 2 Eldrazi for 3 mana, and I just love him.
Abzan Eldrazi, plus I guess you could play red and blue too.
Oh, fun thing I used to do with this card in Standard, you say Catacomb Sifter, and then if you need to sacrifice your Scion, you say, sack my Scion, get my Scry on. And that got a laugh. Sometimes. I'm sure somebody laughed.
Like a pity laugh?
No, somebody liked it. Somebody liked it. Maybe it was my mom. How about non-budget ads, please?
There are so many non-budget ads that we can add here because Eldrazi are expensive. One of them is Ugin's Binding. You can bounce something to their owner's hand, and when you cast a really big spell, you can do kind of like a Psych Rift impersonation. It's pretty interesting.
This card seems insane and kind of busted to me in this deck. I hate to play against it because that means now you can play Psych Rift and this. And this is only a 3-mana thing, and then later when you cast something big, you just get one for free.
But like, imagine maybe playing this in like maybe just like a rampy deck or like a landfall deck or something you could like cascade something big into. It just says cast something 7 or greater. It's pretty doable in Commander in general.
Yeah, you can fire off like a Mere Battlesphere and trigger this. It's kind of cool. Rise of the Eldrazi also, I think you have to have it in an Eldrazi deck because it's the set that they started out. It's got all 3 Titans, and it's got the cast trigger of all 3 original Titans. Is super, super cool. We also have Ulamog the Defiler. I think the next 3 we're going to mention are just the new Titans from MH3 because they all fit super well in this deck. They're just ridiculous. Ulamog nukes half of someone's deck, but the biggest problem that their opponents are going to have is it's going to have Annihilator like 7.
And it's also going to have Ward of like sack 2 permanents.
Kind of ridiculous.
So if you don't have anything like disposable lying around, like a treasure or a clue, it's like, I guess they'll sack the 2 lands that are tapped.
Yeah.
I guess that's fine.
All of these cards read like a fever dream. Kozilek is 9 mana, draw 4, and it creates 19 power. Like, what is happening? And it also, if you have any other colorless creatures, it creates more power than that, and you can get an overrun out of it.
Oh, that's so gross. Especially if you can just get a bunch of little signs like, oh, I have like 10 0/1s. You're not scared of that, but what if I put down Kozilek?
Yeah, what if they were 3/3s?
Giant?
Jeez. And what about Emrakul?
This just has so many words on it. Like, the madness makes it super cheap. It has protection from things cast this turn and spells. And you steal people's stuff, and if it leaves, you just destroy all your creatures. It has so many words on it, and oh, by the way, it's giant, too. I forgot about that. It has giant stats.
Yeah, the losing all your creatures, the prospect of that is scary, but it's not just your creatures, it's somebody else's, too, and stealing them is already great. I just think that Emrakul is so hard to kill that it's not going to matter most of the time. Like, the fact that Emrakul dies to a board wipe is irrelevant because the downside doesn't matter then. Your creatures are gone. They can't be sacrificed.
I mean, everything dies to removal.
Exactly.
Stuff.
Everything
but
dies.
this has some weird like types of removal that you're gonna have to play around to get it off the field.
Yeah, there's only a few ways to actually take out Emeralds. I think it's really cool. As for cuts, this one had some just random crap. I think Suffer the Past is in here because it's from Rise of the Eldrazi. That's literally the only connection I can make. It is so bad, it hurts my brain. Dreamstone Hedron is like 6 mana ramp, and on the surface it might be okay, but we really just don't want to spend turn 6 ramping. We want to be ramping before that and cast a 9-drop on turn 6.
We also just don't need it because we can play all 5 colors. If you wanted to play other types of ramp, you can at that point.
Ugin's Insight can only ever draw us 3 cards, and so I think there's better ways to pay off of Eldrazi. Scattering Invasion is just 7 mana for 5 spawns. That's the closest to playable out of here. I just don't think we need that. I don't think 7 mana is what we want to do. Well, making 5 is not what we want to do for 7.
It's just not fast enough, and we're pulling out these big boys at 7 mana. That just doesn't seem right. I feel like it might be a little bit thematic, though. Maybe that's why they put it in.
Yeah, and then lastly, Ulamog's Nullifier. Did I miss something? How are we supposed to get cards in our opponent's exile zone? I think this just was, like, bad.
I mean, it's like, you're probably going to put the other Ulamog in there. Why don't you just exile a couple things?
Well, this Precon doesn't have that, so get rid of it until you go all in on the processor route. But that does bring us to our number 1 MH3 deck, and that is...
That is Tricky Terrain at $65. Who would have guessed that the Simic one is on top? The commander is Omo, Queen of Vesuva. 2 and a hybrid of blue or green for a 1/5. When she ETBs or attacks, put an everything counter on each of up to 1 target land and up to 1 target creature. Each land with an everything counter on it is every land type in addition to its other types. Each non-land creature with an everything counter on it is every creature type. Everything counter? That's a new one.
Yeah, this only matters for her, and the everything counter doesn't do anything if she is not in play, so it's not like a flying counter. It won't always give everything to your creature. She has to be in play to give those last 2 static abilities to your things. But when we mentioned the price of the Precon at $65, what if I told you that the value of the individual cards, at least today at presale, is $290? That blows the Eldrazi Precon out of the water. This is $5 more than the other 2 lower Precons. I don't know what's going on here. This Precon just seems cracked. And I even went a little bit above and beyond for the best reprints. But this is like, this to me, the deck is a little confused. It's kind of like Simic Good Stuff, and you want to take advantage of a lot of different lands that say like Locust or Urza's Tron lands or deserts, because she makes them all everything. And then you have a couple of creatures that pay things off. But mostly this is a lands deck that has a bunch of random stuff in it, which still ends up being okay, I think.
I mean, that makes it pretty fun, though. I mean, bringing all these different types of everything and anything into it, I feel like that's a good, like a better take on Landfall, at least. It makes it a little bit less boring, I'd say.
And they did the right thing, and they made the commander cheap. And so you can actually get this going early, and even if the commander dies, all your work isn't reset, because all those lands are going to stick around, and they still have the counters on them, so you can still get things going. I think Almost pretty cool. I think this deck, while weird looking, is at least a little bit cohesive. But the best reprints, now normally we talk about the best 3. I went ahead and talked about the best 5. We got Apex Devastator at $22, so just shy of best reprint by $1, behind a Chroma's Will.
There's also Vesuva in here, copying lands, Field of the Dead, perhaps. I feel like with all the reprints in here, we're going to talk about the next 3 in a bit. I feel like I need to buy these recently anyways. Maybe I should just pick up the Precon and get these cards anyways. It's cheaper.
So, yeah, we're going to get to that. Yavimaya Cradle of Growth, $12. We also have Mana Reflection at $12. And Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath at $12. Those 5 cards are $73. And except Vesuva and Yavimaya, none of them have really anything to do with this deck. And you can just cut them no problem. So if you flipped these 5 cards, you could get... Let's even assume that you don't get 73 because it's harder to sell cards. You could get your entire Precon back. Did we just create an infinite money glitch?
Maybe. I mean, these are really good cards. I'm surprised to see them in here. And just, these are cards where I could see them just having homes elsewhere. I mean, I have Apex Devastator and Sylvala. Obviously, Yavimaya goes into so many decks. Uro is just good stuff in general.
I was surprised to see Vesuva in here. That's one of the cards I was going to add for the non-budget ads, and they already added it. I was like, that never happens in a Precon. So super big props for this, for the reprint value, for the individual value of the cards. This Precon feels like you are getting all of your money's worth. Let's go to the best new cards. Aggressive Biomancy, XX green blue sorcery. You get X tokens that are a copy of a creature, except when they enter, they fight something. So I can pay 4 mana to copy one of my creatures once. I can pay 6 mana to copy one of my creatures twice. I can pay 8 mana to copy one of my creatures 3 times, etc.
How many, do you really think you can get out of this reasonably? Because I was thinking about it, I was like, ooh, I could compare this, Azorius Predation, but I was like, you need so many copies for that.
Oh, yeah, you're not going to get a board wipe out of this. I mean, you're going to win the game if you copy your best creature like 7 times. I wasn't even going past 3 because, I don't know, 10 mana is a lot to have.
I'm trying to dream big here.
You're dreaming so
with
big.
like cost reduction too. I'm trying to dream huge.
Dream big with Desert Warfare. Why don't you dream big with that one?
3 green for a sorcerer. Whenever you sack a desert, and whenever a desert card's put into your graveyard from your hand or your library, you put that card onto the battlefield under your control at the beginning of the next end step. At the beginning of combat in your turn, if you control 5 or more deserts, create that many 1/1 red, green, and white Sand Warrior tokens with haste. This can go real fast.
This is, that was a lot. But when you do the thing that deserts want to do, which a lot of deserts say sacrifice a desert, or they have cycling, they just come back to you. So this is good in any desert deck, but it's also good in the everything deck where you have a bunch of weird stuff going on. But it's also kind of a win con if you have ways to pump these things. Making like 6 or 10 whatever desert warrior tokens, that's pretty cool.
I feel like this is a little bit late though. Why didn't I see this in the Yuma deck?
Yeah, where were you? Well, come on, Wizard.
That was like last set. That wasn't even that like
ago.
long ago. That was like last month.
Good call out on that one. Let's go to our next card, which is actually Moxfield.com, the best way to build a deck online. You can view some of your favorite brewers on Moxfield. Click the Explore Brewers option, and you can see us. We're the most followed content creators on there, and if you want to give us a follow, we'd love it. Planar Nexus, though, is the next one. It's a land, and all it is it's every non-basic land type, but that includes Cave, Desert, Gate, Lair, Locust, Mine, Power Plant, Sphere, Tower, and Urzas. So this counts as Tron by itself. However, you will need another one of the Tron lands to actually get mana off of it. That's a bonus mana. It's also a Gate if you're trying to play Maze's End. It's also a Locust if you have the Locust lands. It's also a Desert and Cave if you have like Lost Caverns or Outlaws Thunder Junction stuff.
I see this spiking real fast, especially for the Maze's End players.
No, it's hard to spike when it starts out at 30.
Oh, I didn't realize it was that high right now. But moving on to budget ads. These are ads at less than $1, which is like a lot of your deck somehow. But
yeah, we have Zola Toyak, the Smiling Flood. I thought this card was crap, and I thought I would never talk about it again on the entire channel forever. But it untaps all your permanents with counters on them, and since a lot of them are going to be lands, it actually can kind of represent almost an extra turn if you get to end your turn with it.
I'm so happy that we're talking about him. He's a cute little axolotl.
He's the axolotl.
I want to see him more.
You know, axolotl Zolotoyak, Lord of the Unreal. This is where I want to get to the part of the deck that the Wizards didn't really do anything with. They went the land route, but you can also go the creature route. And since creatures, there's certain lords of types that give really great bonuses to the type, but the type is really specific. Lord of the Unreal gives hexproof to illusions, and since it's not an illusion, there was no reason for them when they printed it to say other illusions. So if you put an everything counter on Lord of the Unreal, it is an illusion that gives itself +1/+1 hexproof. It will do the same thing to all of your others. And so when you put the everything counter on Omo next, now they're both hexproof.
Our promise helps you ramp, and you might be able to get a couple of zombies if you have a few deserts, which you probably can't have because your commander comes down so cheap and will put a bunch of the everything counters on all of your lands.
Yeah, I also like Mirror Galvanizer. This is funny because there was that Shapeshifter deck that was like 5 colors, and everybody put all the different payoffs into it because they had a bunch of changelings. This is like that, but more focused and interesting to me. Mirror Galvanizer can untap all your mirror, aka all your creatures.
I think that, yeah, that is interesting. I always said Morophon is like the cop-out, right? But this is a way to make your underutilized creature types actually more cohesive, I'd say.
Yeah, we have Cyclone Summoner too. If your creatures are wizards, this bounces everybody else's stuff, and conveniently, none of your stuff. Amber has graced us with her presence, so we're going to get to the non-budget ads, and I'm going to start with Open the Way. This is a ramp spell, and it might look kind of tame, but it actually helps get you all of your weirdo lands in play. Since it's not searching for basics, you can just flip whatever, so I can hit my Urza Tron lands and my Cloud Post lands off of this so that I can advance my game plan faster.
I mean, it definitely helps you sift through. That's really nice.
Yeah, it's super cool. Timber Protector, such a weird, crappy throwaway card, but it gives your forests and tree folk indestructible. And now when all your lands are forests and when all your creatures are tree folk, suddenly that becomes very, very relevant, and your opponents can't stop you at all.
Roaming Throne is also great in here. You know, we didn't like it when you only had to pick one creature type, but if everything is everything, just pick something, because everything will trigger, and it'll be great.
Yep, just pick your commander first, whatever type Oma is, I forget. I think she's a shapeshifter. Pick that, so that now when she enters, she starts putting extra things, because Roaming Throne will trigger her again, and now all your creatures will trigger twice if they have triggered abilities, and it just helps to get your game plan going faster. I also like Swarm Yard. It regenerates creatures. Can you name the creatures types that Swarm Yard regenerates off the top of your head?
What, Scoot?
That's not even a creature type, but I think it's like spiders, snakes, bats, and like rats or something
I was like, it's
that.
gonna be some sort of insect. It's
all
gonna
your
be some like if someone says you get those varmin out of
Varmint,
here.
Yeah, it's all the varmints.
I was like, it's gonna be whatever people allude to when they say varmin. And Field of the Dead. Have you ever heard of this one? I just don't understand how you're not playing this
if you've
card.
got a bunch of different lands, you might as well just throw in Field of the Dead. I half expected them when I saw Vesuva to put this in the deck, but no, they didn't. But they knew that that's my job to tell you to put Field of the Dead in your deck.
It was a personal slight against Buzzy.
To not play it, to not have it in there.
To not have it in here, they went, you know what? Buzzy
They
will.
let me talk about it. I respect that.
Buzzy will be mad about this.
Yeah. Okay. Cuts for the deck. Some cards that were in here, and I just kind of go, what? Propaganda. I mean, yeah, like I'd rather not be attacked, just in a general sense, but it doesn't mean I should play propaganda in my deck.
It's not worth wasting a card slot on it. It's not a pillow fort deck. You know,
What does this do? Like,
you have creatures too. You can swing back.
How does this help us? Floriferous Vine Wall kind of helps us in the sense that it gets lands. It's just, why would anyone play this card? It's not a commander card. Poison Dart Frog, kind of the same thing. We don't need this. It's like a weird defensive mana dork. Let's just play good cards. Let's ramp our lands. Let's help get this everything going because it's kind of tricky.
Summary Dismissal is a meta call. This is for the Eldrazi deck. So if you're going to be playing this against any other pod that isn't the 4 decks that we talk about here, you should take it out and Growth Spiral because we want to be ramping for realsies, not just with Growth Spiral type deals.
Growth Spiral is just like the most overplayed Simic card. It's totally fine.
It's fine. It's value, I guess.
Maybe if you take this very heavily in the land route, you can play it, but I still might just rather have a guaranteed ramp spell that always puts a land in play instead of draw and then you have to have one in your hand. I'm really not a big fan of Growth Spiral, but we're a big fan of these Precons. These Precons were kind of hot fire. I think the energy one can win games. The Termagant one is very interesting, especially if you upgrade it. The Eldrazi one is like off the wall, and this is the weirdest deck I've ever seen, and it has a ton of value in it. So figure out what Precons you like. If you want to buy them all, you can do it on Card Kingdom. If you want to buy them individually, you can do it on Card Kingdom. Stay tuned for the next Modern Horizons 3 video, and for now, check out the most previous set of Precons.